Right, we're rolling for bit of a different one. I've done one of these videos before. It's EDP and EDT fragrance mini review, because it's not going to be based off of like bottles that I've done in the past. It's actually going to be excuse me, the little samples that you get, like, just to show you an example. So the yeah, like the actual samples that you sometimes get, this is just one of them, Armani code, that you get with orders, be it online or when you can go into shops and actually request these. Sometimes they charge you, sometimes they don't. I always used to like this with online orders, because I would always say, if I did £100 order, for example, just throwing that out there, I could remember, say, I don't know, I get 2 or 3 fragrances fairly cheap, and then they'd be like, okay, well, you know, as I think the saying's gratis, like as a thank you, like as a gift, they'd give you a sample, or sometimes several. So I have done this before. I just basically, I do like an introductory to what I'm actually doing. I put these onto my skin, and these ones in particular I've never tried before. Obviously I've heard of some of them like before. So I do the initial smell. I'm not going over like notes and so on like normal. Obviously I've written down what it is and if it's an EDT, EDP. And because again today I'm not working, doing it, I'm not going to the gym, gives a kind of a good, minus going on my bike, it gives a good reading or accuracy, shall we say, of the longevity, the initial radiance, the performance, and so on. So again, I'm just putting this out there so that for people who are curious or looking to purchase these particular EDTs, EDPs, it gives them a bit of a heads up. And again, as I mentioned in the past, I try to be analytical. I try to be subjective, where I'm not like showing a bias. So again, some of these brands I've heard of, and these actual fragrances, but I've never tried them on my skin, or these new iterations. So without further ado, the first one is Diesal Only the Brave EDT, which is this one. So I'm going to open it up. So again, as I say, this is just the initial impression, the first smell, not the dry down. I'm going to do that follow-up video in several hours. So an intense punch of leather warmed up by a blend of amber and wood accords. That sounds okay. So that's what the bottle would look like. I've seen it before. I think more recently I reviewed Diesal Bad Intense, which is okay. Diesal line isn't too bad, pretty middle of the road in my opinion. So what we're going to do, I'm going to, as the same format before, I've only got so much skin on my arm, so I'm going to do a wrist one, higher up on the upper arm, and then I'm doing 4, so just knock 4 out and do it as quick as I can. So here we go. So this is it an EDT? Yeah, EDT. So I expect, again, big radiance, but the performance of an EDT doesn't, or tends to leave a lot to be desired. Usually by several hours it's just faded to nothing. So let's see how we get on. So I do 3 sprays with the EDT. Give that a few seconds to settle. Okay, so already I'm getting quite a nice radiance here. That's usually to be expected. That's usually how an EDT is. It tends to go onto the skin and give off big radiance to begin with. And then I'm going to just give my initial opinion. So here we go. So this is actually very nice. I'm surprised. I didn't expect this to be as flat. It's like florally, citrusy, sweet. A little bit synthetic. I will put that out there. This is the thing with certain brands, and you know, and again, I'm not going to say for the price of certain products that you necessitate a better quality of ingredients, but certain lines, like certain shall we say more popular designer fragrances, they tend to be fairly consistent in slightly above average, but overly sweet or overly synthetic or overly something. There's a bit like the other Diesal Bad Intense. There was just part of that I just didn't agree with, where in comparison to this, I've never smelt this before, and this is really nice. really pleasant. I'm surprised. Again, I've got a feeling how it's like sort of like settling now. It's very sweet, flowery. Smells like a summery fragrance. So again, from the description, I didn't, I've never tried this before. An intense punch of leather, and I like leather. I'm not getting so much leather as say with other formulas I've done more recently, but it's definitely there. Blend of warm ambers. So it's strange because how I detect this is like flowery and sweet. So again, the fact that it's got woods, obviously that's in the background, and that's probably why I like it. But it's just it surprised me going off that description. I didn't expect that. And I actually already, again, having owned the Diesel Bad Intense, I prefer this. And I've not, this is just the initial impression. This isn't the longevity in the performance. So again, that could lower the marks. But in terms of like initial impression for this, I think that's an 8. Or maybe that's being a bit generous. I'll give that a 7. So I'll write that down. So again, I'm going to be basing it off the initial impression, the dry down, and then the lifespan. So the initial is always going to be kind of on an EDT very impressive. So that's why I'm not going to jump the gun with that. That's why I've kind of reevaluated. I don't want a schoolboy error going 10 out of 10 because it's really powerful and so on. Already it's starting to settle. But yeah, very nice. So florally, woody, kind of, I'd describe it as sort of relaxing. But yeah, very pleasant, very wearable. I think most environments you could wear it. It's not obnoxious or anything. I've got a feeling though it's not going to be very beastly and overly powerful though. That's how I detect it already. So that's a 7 out of 10. So that's Diesel Only the Brave. And the next one, let's try and knock them out. Not go into too much detail. This is Armani Code, the Parfum. So that's interesting. Several years, Giorgio Armani, Armani Code. So several years ago, I had the original of this. The EDT is kind of expensive now, and they have multiple different versions of it. I smelt one more recently in a shop, I think just before Christmas time, in Boots, and it was the Parfum. So it might have been this one. And off of the card, it didn't really impressed me, and it smelled quite different than the original EDT. So I just thought I'd put that out there because usually people just assume that by buying the Parfum or the Elixir that it's going to be the same formula but just stronger. That's not always the way. And in regards to this one, yeah, this was the one that I tested just on the card. I didn't even want to try it on the skin because again it smelt very different to me as what it did before. So being an EDP, we're gonna go on the upper arm. Just gonna do, well actually there's only a little bit of this in there for some reason. This is meant to be new. So maybe it's been used, I don't know. I've not used it, but here we go. So okay, quite a lot come out there. So the 2 will do. Okay, let that dry down a bit. That's what you do, so it can settle on the skin. Yeah, different. It's definitely not as it has the DNA, shall we say, of the original Armani Code. It's kind of, I don't want to say it's similar to say like a Dior Sauvage or something like that, but the musk choice and the kind of the smokiness is there, which I don't remember in the original. The original I remember being like, yeah, manly, masculine, but it was kind of like a sweetness edge to it. From my recollection, it was just very pleasant, but brand new at the time and expensive. And then I think later on it was Armani Diamonds and so on. Obviously I'm talking a bit about other in comparisons also to let this dry down so that I can go in there and inspect it better. Yeah, so it's nice. It's nothing special though. It's kind of like it's definitely changed. I think in my mind or my memory bank, it's like I'm trying to revisit the original Armani Code, and this is very different. But again, I'm going to come back with the dry down review where it might morph and change because EDPs tend to do that on the skin. Yeah, so far, if anything, it reminds me more of a Dior Sauvage at the moment. It's not overly sweet. It is masculine, but again, it's fairly pleasant and wearable. I don't want to say that it's just for certain environments. This one, in comparison, I would say is more like dates, going out kind of thing. It's got like a more darkness about it, more so than the original. So I'd say maybe the EDT is like sweeter and more radiant and projecting. This is more sort of like a Dior Sauvage. It's more darker, more like musky and that sort of thing. But yeah, that's nice. So 7 again, going off the initial impression. Obviously the original I really liked, just to draw a comparison, hence I ended up buying a bottle of it. But this is kind of different. Again, I'm not going to jump the gun too early. I'm just going to do the initial review now, of the impression, shall we say, so the smell, how to detect it, where it's wearable, the wearability of it, and so on. And then obviously I'll come back in a few hours, 4 or 6 hours, and I'll re-review then. So on to the next one. So this is Yves Saint Laurent Myself EDP. Load of French writing. Where's the English? Okay. So the first YSL Beauty woody floral for a contrasted trail of modernity. Mouthful. Fresh and vibrant, accord at first, raw and beating orange blossom at the heart, sensual and textured woods at last. Okay. So yeah, again, I didn't expect that either. I've just sprayed a bit there accidentally onto hand. Luckily, it's going onto this one. It's not housed very well. Luckily, it's not been sprayed either, unlike the Armani code. But more recently, just to kind of go over, I've not owned an Yves Saint Laurent before. This was Yves Saint Laurent Y, hence the Y, and it was nice. I gave this a 7 out of 10. It was just the performance was a bit lacking, and it was fairly safe. It wasn't special, but it was sort of like I don't want to say like a typical Frenchy smell like a Dior or a Chanel. It was just it's sort of like classy, and you can tell there's some like why it's a bit expensive, because there's me saying why and it be called why. It was just, again, fairly safe. I was expecting a bit more. Paid over £100, or it is worth over £100 for this size. So it'll be interesting to draw comparisons, because this was kind of like a green kind of mixture of like outdoors, kind of like gym, sort of that kind of vibe it gave. So it was pleasant. I gave this a 7 out of 10. It was a little bit disappointing, because for the money I was expecting more. So this is Y Myself EDP. Is it EDP? Yeah, EDP. So we're gonna go for 2 sprays. Okay. So doesn't help. I think I'm just getting over the remnants of a head cold. Either that, or I tend to suffer with in the summer, like a lot of people, hay fever. That's why I'm a bit coughy, a bit nose blocked uppy, only slightly. It is obviously, I can still smell things, I can still detect things, but you can probably tell I'm a little bit bunged up. But yeah, already the radiance off of this in comparison to the other two is just like, that's why I put my arm down, because as soon as I sprayed it, so that's what I kind of expect. That's what I'm looking for with, you know, obviously I'm not going through the pricing of these, but when you pay a bit more and you go to certain houses, you expect that kind of almost heritage of strong, long-lasting or highly radiant fragrances, especially for the money that you're spending. Obviously, I'm going through samples here, but you know, in the past, some fragrances I've not spent the earth, and like say, an example, the Armaf Club de Nuit, the Bentley for Men Intense, and they're really strong and projecting last ages, and they didn't cost, they were both under £50, and they're large bottles. So again, you know, again, I'm talking and just going over some other things to kind of let this settle before I go, because this, of the 3 I've put on, this is very radiant already. So almost like an EDT in terms of the radiance. Let's go in. Okay, so yeah, different. I wasn't expecting that from the radiance I'm getting. It's just I don't want to describe it as sort of like a classic sort of French, like a gentlemanly smell. But I picture this again, kind of along the similar lines of the Y, Eve Centre on Y that I've reviewed before, but different. No, less green. This is more like hard to describe. Again, more recently I've done like classic fragrances, or sorry, gentlemanly fragrances in the Saint Helier and the Savile Row, but yeah, it's wearable. It's nothing special. Again, I don't want to. The initial radiance, I thought, cool, this is going to be really powerful. But let's just go through comparisons. So Diesel the Brave is sort of fading, but there's certain notes in that I really like, but it's fairly weak in all honesty. Armani Code's nice. It reminds me kind of similar to, or the DNA of the original, but a bit of a Dior Sauvageness about it, like smoky and kind of musky. And then obviously you've got the Y myself, which is EDP. Yeah, it's okay. Like, again, I would say a 7 out of 10. The initial radiance had me thinking that I'd be really impressed with this. So again, that's why it's important to do the initial review, and then not just base a whole review on that, because again, some of these fragrances might change or get worse, but I'm already kind of detecting that the Diesel, the Brave, I think within a few hours that'll fade away to nothing. And then obviously you've got the Armani Code, which I personally prefer the original smell, the EDT, and then you've got something that's similar to what I've already got. The Y myself, it's sort of like a little bit sweeter, a little bit more less green and kind of less ozonic, is more sort of, should we say, traditional. And then on to the final one, which is Tiffany and Co. Oh, whoopsie-daisies, as Hugh Grant would say. Probably people saying, who's Hugh Grant? But a classic gentleman, shall we, along them lines anyway. Right, so we're going to knock this out, get it done before 20 minutes, already kind of gone a bit over time. But again, I'm trying to interject a bit of comparisons with other fragrances. Again, I could just read notes and then just say, oh, it's lovely, or as I joke in other videos, or it melts in the mouth, like when someone, you know, does an analogy for a steak, and it's like, that's not really a review, is it? But again, I'm just going through the initial reviews and comparisons. So we'll move on to the final one, which is Tiffany and Co. Obviously, I've heard of Tiffany in terms of jewellery, but not fragrances. So this will be interesting for him. And this is EDT. Okay. So far of the three, I would probably say the Armani Code and the Y myself are like on par, like a 7 out of 10. The Diesel, the Brave, the initial smell, very nice, but already it was fading, which is to be expected. So this is probably going to be similar, but we don't know. I have no idea what this is going to smell like. I've not got the card or anything with it, so there's no notes on this. So let's see if it comes out. There we go. Bit of a struggle there. There's plenty of it, but the spray wasn't great. Okay. Ooh. So the radiance on this, again, very potent. This is how usually an EDT is designed. I've got to try and end this on 20 minutes. Yeah, so that's nice. It's sort of like minty, fresh, citrusy. But then there's elements of like a classic gentleman fragrance. Kind of weird how it's worked out that I've ended up with four fragrances that just completely surprised me with how they smell. But this is nice. I would actually say this is a 7.5. I kind of like this. Which has surprised me, because again, I've never smelt a Tiffany one. We're going to try and end it there. But yeah, 7.5 for that one. Albeit that's an EDT, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes in terms of the longevity and so on. So I'm going to end this there for the part one, and I'll come back for the part two, where several hours later I'll do the dry down review and how long it lasted, the longevity and performance. So I'll see you in a bit.